Hi again and welcome. It's great to have you with us this month for Keep in Mind. We have a very special guest this month, Craig Stenning, who is the director of the Rhode Island BHDDH, and I'm going to say it once because it is just this long name. So it's the BHDDH, Department of Behavioral Healthcare, Developmental Disabilities, and Hospitals. Craig Stenning, welcome.
Nice to be back.
And of course, Dziobek, our president and CEO. Well, first of all, we want to start with a wonderful honor that the director has received in August, received the Romstad Kennedy Award for Outstanding Leadership by the National Recovery Month Planning Partners. So you tell us what all that means, and certainly it's a nice honor for you and, of course, the state of Rhode Island, Craig.
It's a great honor for the state of Rhode Island and for the work that we've done over the past 5 or 6 years to promote a recovery-oriented system of care in Rhode Island, and also to recognize the achievements of individuals who have fought and worked extremely hard to maintain and achieve their recovery. We have been fortunate in the past 2 years to actually receive 3 different recognitions. I'm certainly pleased to have received the Leadership Award named after Representative Romstad and Representative Kennedy. Obviously, being from Rhode Island, the fact that Patrick Kennedy is part of that makes it quite special for us. I was surprised. It was I wasn't aware that I had been nominated, and I was told on a Friday that the award was going to be presented the following Tuesday. And the award recognizes a state leader, a director of the substance abuse division in each state that has achieved a certain level of recognition for their work in recovery. And it's the federal government's and Faces and Voices of Recovery's way of saying, if we are truly to reach a recovery-oriented system of care, there has to be a partnership between the state department and the community. And as you know, we've done a lot of work at the state level to promote this. We also were recognized 2 years ago in 2010 as the best recovery rally in the country. And that rally's coming up in a few weeks.
We'll get to that, absolutely.
And we were also selected just a few months ago to be the hub site for the 2013 recovery events. And we're going through this year's events right now, so I've been watching what it means to be the hub site. It's quite impressive. All the activities around the country will be streaming through Rhode Island. Yeah. All the states that are having events on that day will be showing those events on a large screen in Providence. Most of the national figures that are associated with this movement will be here in Providence for that event. So it's been quite a couple of years of recognition.
Well, Joe, as the leader of Fellowship Health Resources for the better part of 4 decades now, you've been working with Craig for many, many years, so I'm sure that this comes by no surprise to you.
No, it doesn't come as a surprise. I think Craig has shown outstanding leadership, been willing to, I think, take some risks in the sense of taking on some programs, for example, the health homes, which is one of the kind of groundbreaking in Rhode Island. You've got other states that are kind of watching very carefully what's happening here. And I think what Craig had said a moment ago about the partnership between the community and the department, it can't work if you've got only one going in one direction and one going in the other. I think there's been a really good partnership here. And for a small state, we make a lot of noise, and we'll be making a lot more noise, I think, next year with the recovery rally here.
Well, in these days, too, innovation and creativity, I would think, would have to be at the forefront of any of the models that you're putting together, because really, we know that it begins and ends with funding. Mm-hmm. And funding is such a critical piece of all this. But how is this going so far, Craig? Is this, because I think a lot of people in the industry have kind of looked at this as, we won't call it an experiment, but in many ways there was a lot of unknowns going in.
I think it's going well, but it is a very challenging time right now. If you look at the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, if we consider the expansion of Medicaid, which will have a significant effect upon the populations that we're involved with. One of the reasons why our name is so long is that in most states, our department would be several different departments. So, you know, we are involved in looking at services for people with substance abuse and mental health issues, as well as developmental disabilities, and we operate the state's only hospital. So the Medicaid expansion is a major issue for us to look at. The establishment of the health exchanges and what the essential benefits package will look like is a critical one for us. If you look at the federal legislation, they list 10 different areas that the health exchange has to address. One of those 10 areas, the statement in the federal legislation says mental health and substance abuse services and behavioral health. They haven't really defined. They've given some guidance. They're still coming out with further guidance, but we have a few weeks to make a decision about what the Rhode Island Health Exchange Essential Benefit Package will look like. So we are in conversations with the governor's office, with the lieutenant governor, with the health insurance commissioner, with the new director of the health exchange, with the director of Medicaid, so on and so forth. That decision will hold until 2016, whatever decisions we make. The same goes true for the Medicaid expansion. Rhode Island is unique in that we have the global waiver in place. We are, I think, ending the third or beginning the fourth year of the global waiver. And that put into place a system of benefits for people who would not normally be eligible for Medicaid. They're known in the field as CNOMs, costs not normally matched. But individuals who fall below 200% of the federal poverty level, who have needs in the area of substance abuse and mental health in Rhode Island and in Rhode Island only, we have been receiving a Medicaid-like match for those services, so it's allowed us to expand in that area. If you look at the conditions of the Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act, they line up with that population. Not exactly, there'll be some gaps, but in every state, they're debating how these services are going to be implemented. We are ahead of most states in that discussion.
It's extraordinarily complicated. I mean, when you start talking about stuff like this, and as we always say, anyone who is involved in mental health, dependency, substance abuse, treatment, it's always about trying to help people. It's always trying to be at the root of getting someone to a better place in their life. So with that, I will ask the two of you to weigh in on this, since you very well explained that, Craig. Are you optimistic? Do you feel like the voice of Rhode Island is being heard in Washington, D.C.?
Well, as I mentioned, we are fortunate in that our governor, our lieutenant governor, the congressional delegation, and the General Assembly we're all in unison, going back 2 years, saying that this is an essential part of the plan that we need to develop to provide services to the people of Rhode Island. The challenge is how we actually make these decisions and how we implement it in a relatively short period of time. We have between now and really the middle of next year to put this new system in place. I'm pleased to be in the position that we're in. It doesn't mean that the next year or so isn't going to be challenging, however.
Joe, you want to weigh in on that, what the director just said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Craig said. I think I also want to say that from a provider perspective, these are very challenging times because, you know, as you pointed out at the beginning of the show, I've been here a while. But Craig has too. I noticed you didn't comment on that, but
well, that's later.
You know, what I had seen over many of the course of the years is a change in philosophy about the people we serve, you know, and the idea of people now being able to recover from mental illness is not, you know, it's a fairly recent idea, I think, or concept, and not everybody is still on board with that. And I started out in the days when people thought you just try to get somebody to a certain level of functioning, as they called it, and that was really the goal. So I think from a philosophical standpoint, how you work with people clinically has evolved. But I think what we face now is really when you talk about a change in basically the fundamental structure of healthcare, and it's different from state to state, county to county. The position that we find ourselves in is trying to figure out how do we bring some uniformity to our approach when there are some states, such as Rhode Island, that is, leading the pack, if you will. Some in the middle of the pack. Some states, as Craig mentioned, are not getting involved, with regard to the Medicaid expansion, and those are some states that we do provide services in. So our challenge is really to look at, from an organizational perspective, how do we respond to the changes that are occurring state by state with these service systems. And the other piece that complicates it, I think, is when you bring in the integration of behavioral health and primary health care. We may not have had a direct relationship with, let's say, a Lifespan or a Care New England in the past, but that may be something that will be, an expectation in the future, and one that our services will be gravitating to. So we're in the strategic planning process now, and part of that process is to try to figure out from the information that we have how we're going to go forward. Because just as the healthcare systems are changing, fellowships will change as an organization to respond to those changes.
Well, and I'll just, in a few words, if you could, Craig, just tell us, from where you are at right now, and as you said, this is really sort of a developing model that's taking place right now. Are you going forward? Are you optimistic that people will continue to get the care that they need and are served in a way that will get everyone to a better place?
I am. I'm very optimistic. As Joe just mentioned, there's a couple of tenets under the Affordable Care Act, and one of them is the integration of behavioral health into primary care. And we've talked for years about parity. And Congressman Kennedy is quite eloquent in talking about the fact that by parity, most people thought it meant that people should get paid the same or the services should have the same rates. That's not really what parity meant. What parity meant was that we should be treating people as a whole, that we should be treating people above the neck the same way we're treating them below the neck. So it has finally recognized the fact that behavioral health is a strong and integral and important part of the treatment of someone's well-being. The challenge is, how do we make that happen without losing ground, without losing the unique system that we have in place right now in behavioral health? And part of that is the merging that's taking place under health homes. But we've been talking a lot about systems, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is still a system of care that deals with individuals one at a time. Yesterday was a great example. I spent time in 3 different meetings looking at some of these big picture issues, but when I got back to my desk, there were phone calls from 2 different families and another provider agency specifically looking at how do we take care of this individual? Can you help us with my family's case? And agencies such as Fellowship and our other community partners are our partners in making sure that people don't fall through the cracks. So, we have to do both of those initiatives at the same time. Make sure that we continue to provide services to individuals on a one-by-one basis, but we put in place the foundation, which will be a whole new funding system. The way in which we fund services today will not look like that at all by 2014, and agencies need to realize that. I just did a community meeting this week that looked at technology and exchange of information. We need to get over the fact that all of this data needs to be kept in certain silos to protect confidentiality, because people need to be treated as one whole person.
Okay, and I'm sure you will continue to keep us, we'll be kept abreast as we go along and move along with that system, and it's certainly something that's very important for people, so we will stay on top of it. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back to talk about this Rally for Recovery that is coming up in the state of Rhode Island and very, very soon. Okay, we here at Fellowship are extremely proud to have received, over the last several weeks, a National Telly Award in 2012 for a story of recovery, which we produced a video on last year. And this is a national award, Joe, that, as you know, there are several thousand people who apply for these awards, and we are honored and proud to receive it. So I know we've presented this to you in the past, but sort of another presentation to you for all your leadership on everything that we do here, obviously to tell everyone, tell the world, tell Rhode Island, tell all of our regions in Fellowship Health Resources that there is hope, that there is recovery going on, it's real, and that all the support that we get from states like Rhode Island goes for good causes. It really does work, and a young man named Ron at Fellowship House in Cranston told his story in such a wonderful, eloquent way, and we won the Telly Award for it. So it's a proud honor for Fellowship, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, and congratulations to you, Mike, and your staff who helped Ron tell his story. And I know in a moment we're going to get to the Rally for Recovery, where a number of people tell their story. And I think that, you know, it's very obviously, you know, exciting to receive this award. But I think what's even more exciting for me is what it represents. And it represents that we're now at a point where, you know, people are able to tell their story, and they're able to move sort of the nation toward the whole area around stigma is one that is difficult to get your hands around sometime. And I think Craig and I could sit here all day and talk about the achievements that people who have mental illness have made and the contributions that they've made. But I think telling their own story is the most powerful way to do it. And again, a credit to you and the media staff for being able to get that story out there and help Ron tell it. And again, there are so many other stories out there that are worthy of, and they don't all get you know, the attention that Ron's story got. But again, the Rally for Recovery is another way to bring folks together to realize I'm not in this alone, and together we can accomplish quite a lot.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the Rally for Recovery, which is coming up here in the state of Rhode Island, September 15th. Same place as usual. It seems to have gotten bigger and bigger and better every year. It's at the Roger Williams National Memorial. And so, Craig, you kind of teased us a little bit earlier, and it's true, because Rhode Island will, in fact, be in the national spotlight in 2013, as we are the hub for the Rally for Recovery nationwide. So this is really, once we kick off this event on September 15th, 2012, the clock is ticking on the next year, which is going to be really big and exciting, right?
It is, and it's actually a whole month of activities. We kick off Recovery Month on August 31st when we unveil the quilt. Each year, a different agency is involved in making the recovery quilt. We selected the women who are at the minimum security facility at the Department of Corrections this year as the site for the quilt. They've created a beautiful, beautiful quilt. Part of the reason why we've been recognized with the awards that we've received is because of the partnership between our department and the Department of Corrections to promote recovery. Last year we had several rallies behind the walls of the ACI. We were the only state to do that. We have 3 rallies coming up this September behind the walls, as well as the kickoff of the quilt. We also have the first ever rally that's taking place on Aquidneck Island, which will be the last event at the end of the month. And the department is hosting, for the first time ever, an evening event, which will be an educational event in which a young woman who had been hospitalized when she was 17 years old and left the state institution in another state and went on to develop a career in the area of filmmaking. And she made a documentary that looks at the institution that she was in and the closing of that institution and what it has meant around the country to have these institutions close. So Lucy Weiner is coming to Rhode Island, and we're hosting an event, and we'll be showing the movie that she produced. But the big rally on September 15th. As you mentioned, begins at 2 o'clock, same place. This year it'll go later than usual because once the rally is over with, we will have the processional down to Water Place Park, candles, messages for people who are in recovery, and messages for people who have passed away, and then we will finish it with a torch around the Water Place Park. So we're adding another aspect to it in preparation for next year, which will be an even bigger event. But as you know, you've always filmed at the rally. We have a lot of entertainment. This year we have the Rockers for Recovery, which is a national band. We have returning the Governor's 88th band, which is the National Guard band. They were with us 2 years ago, and they stole the show. We have both the orchestra as well as the jazz band performing. A lot of free food, and as Joe mentioned, the serious part of it is getting the message across of what the stories are of individuals, and the fact that there is hope, the fact that we've come out of the darkness, bringing it out to the streets of Providence, out to the sunshine, that recovery is possible, and more importantly, to dispel the stigma that people need to be ashamed, that people need to be afraid. They don't need to be. They're part of a much larger community. They've done some really hard work. I always said the reason why I love working in this field is that I get to go along in the journey of recovery. And we've also learned, as your story tells, that recovery is not just about the years in treatment. Recovery is about employment. Recovery is about housing. Recovery is about families. Recovery is important to communities. It's important to the state. It's important to our budget of people paying taxes. It's important to have people vote. So it's a message for the entire community.
Well, I got to tell you, it's a special day at the memorial, Roger Williams. But Craig, when everybody lined up last year, and we got to go along as part of that journey, as you mentioned, and I walked along there, and we all ended up where all those candles are placed at the end. It is a significant moment, and I would invite anyone who has never been a part of this to go down there and be a part of this, because by the time you get there, I'm telling you, there was a feeling in the air, and it's pretty indescribable how everyone ended up there, and then everyone just sort of gathers around. It's very quiet, very silent, but it was a moment.
I was amazed the first year when we did that because it had the same effect on me. I filled out a card in memory of my father. My father was killed by a drunk driver when I was 21 years old, and I had no idea how much it was going to affect me to be walking in the processional and then to see all the candles laid out to form the word recovery. And as you mentioned, it was very quiet, even though it was in the basin next to Waterfire. And I'll never forget that moment.
I was there also, and I know in processing to it, there was the emotions welling up, and I think everyone there. There was definitely a bond, and it was interesting because there were some people who had just gone to Waterfire, had no idea what this procession was about, and a few people asked me, when we had sort of stopped to let traffic go, whatever it's about, and sharing with people, and people were really kind of awed from the sense of what a novel idea, but in some ways one or two people actually said, well, I've got a connection to mental health. My father was at the IMH or something like that, and the old IMH. We don't call it that anymore. That's what happens when you got 40 years worth of...
But we need to remember the history.
Yeah, we need to remember the history. But what I found was that there was a curiosity factor among the people at Waterfire, and some people, I think there maybe even been one or two that just joined the group. Didn't go there for that reason, but when they found out what the purpose was, felt that they wanted to be a part of that. So as Craig said, the numbers just keep growing. I remember the very first one or two, it was maybe half the lot. Now it's spilling out into the sidewalk, and
it is the procession goes a little bit too. There's several blocks between the Roger Williams National Memorial and where we end up at in the side of the basin there. So really there's a curiosity factor too by people who are just happen to be down there that night for water fire and say, you know, what's going on here? And before, in short order, people know what's going on there.
And we've had people call us the following week asking about how do I get treatment, how do I acknowledge the fact that I have an issue that I need to deal with. We were the first state to expand the definition of this rally to include mental health. The federal government did it last year for the first time. We did it 7 years ago. We also expanded it 3 years ago to include developmental disabilities. And people said, well, how does that work with the theme of recovery? So my definition of recovery is that you are no longer defined by your disability or your illness or your disease. You are no longer seen as a person, just as we don't define people that have cancer by their disease. We need to be defined as far as who we are as individuals. And you can rise above it. You might be different. When you come out of treatment and recovery for mental illness, you might be different than the way your life was before, but you can still have a great life.
Yeah.
Right. One other thing I want to point out, although the department is the driver of this event, I met some individuals that I know that are getting services. They're not a Department of Mental Health eligible client, if you will, but there's somebody that I know that happened to be in treatment somewhere, you know, from a private therapist perhaps or whatever, who were there with their family and came over to me. And so, you know, again, the department has taken the leadership, but it's not just people who are getting services through the department necessarily. People in general who have a mental health need have come out. And I think that's part of it is you've broadened
more
the base.
More and more the faces and voices of individuals, faces and voices of recovery, have taken over the direction of this event and this month, which is exactly what we wanted to have happen.
Yeah.
We're happy to support it. We're happy to have staff that help out with it, but it's really a community event. It's not our event.
And we'll be there again this year. We're so pleased to be a part of it, to be able to witness it, Craig, because it is a very special event, and it is a moment. It's a time for reflection, and it's a time for people to pause and say, this is important work that's being done, and this is why everyone that's involved in this is doing it. So we look forward to seeing you again on the 15th, and we know it's going to be a great event. If you want more information on this, you can go to our website, www.fellowshiphr.org, and of course we've got links to BHDDH as well. So Craig, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it. And Joe, as always, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the rally. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.